I think every technique's the best technique. When it's a serious storm, you've got to try, old school paper, but text, phone, email, social media. You've got to get out there, and they're not going to blame you for what happened, but they're going to blame you for not communicating. That's one of the
Yeah.
lessons we've learned. So
Wow.
just being out there in front of it and trying to control the narrative a little bit and keep them as informed as possible. So the first week or 10 days, it was an email every single day, sometimes twice a day, sent from Wilmington because
Mhm.
they had power. They weren't affected out there. They weren't getting to it hindsight. Didn't quite think that all through, but we were sending them out and we had notes and obviously everyone's accounts that we were doing such. Um, and then the other thing we started doing is printing notes out and leaving them on the doors overnight because obviously our hours were affected. So, but we leave it, on the door. And at one point, I think we had 8 or 9 pieces of paper up there communicating things because the old school way is how we had to sort of go back without the tech that we could use.
I mean, Kevin's pretty well spot on. Is you can't over communicate because you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're going to have customers that are upset when you over communicate with them, but the alternative is, I think, much worse. But thinking through the things like how are you going to communicate if you can't use your FMS texting tools because there's no power, or what are you going to do if you have no cell phone coverage, right? You have to kind of have contingencies upon contingencies. One of the things we like to do when we know we have a storm brewing is we start that communication with the tenants prior to having any power issues. I typically will start a text thread with myself, the appropriate district manager, and the store or stores that will be involved, so that we have a method to communicate, provided we have the ability to do so with cell phone. But the other piece, and Kevin, indicated being able to take advantage of Wilmington having power, is think through those contingencies. If you're fortunate enough to have alternatives, whether it's other stores or even people in other geographic areas that may not be impacted, but willing to help you in the event you have to communicate in a different way. We're fortunate that in today's environment, we've got web-based platforms. So provided the power stays on, but then, as long as you've thought about that, what if there is no power, as an example, then if you're having to put signs, handwritten signs on the door for people that stop by and find that the place is locked up tighter than a drum, at least you're able to communicate. And I think that's a big part of preparing for these things ahead of time, is come up with your plan A, B, and C, and think of different things that might happen as a part of that. Losing power, having flood on top of high winds, or how this might progress over stages.